United States presence in the Middle East, and it's messing around in the affairs of countries that have nothing to do with us. Can you comment a little bit about that?
The thing is, that to say that is not to put him on any kind of pedestal.
No.
I mean, we agree that the guy is a mass murderer of civilians, which means he ought to be hanging from a rope. Simple as that. That's not really in question. What's in question is why does this guy do the evil things that he does? And more important, as you said, how does he recruit people to come and work for him? You know, in the 1980s, the Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran, I mean, heck, he had plenty of foreign policies he could have pointed at, but he wasted all his breath complaining about primary elections and R-rated movies and mini skirts and decadent American culture. And nobody cared.
Right.
Bin Laden said, look, they're occupying the land of Mecca, Medina. They're supporting Israel in their occupations of Palestine and Lebanon. They're bombing and blockading and starving the people of Iraq to death.
Right.
They're backing the dictatorships in Jordan, in Egypt, in Saudi, in Qatar, in Bahrain, in Oman, in Kuwait, in Yemen. And so once we get the Americans out of here, then we can overthrow all our local tyrants that we all hate so much. And he got people to agree to that. In fact, Ayman al-Zawahiri was the head of Egyptian Islamic Jihad. And he brought Islamic Jihad is now Al-Qaeda. Years ago, before September 11th, he merged his group into Osama's group because Osama convinced him that rather than focusing on Mubarak, we need to focus on the American empire that backs him. And people don't want to, you know, you think of the footage of that day, hear these planes come out of the clear blue sky, and it makes a great metaphor and everything. But the truth is, September 11th was not the first day in the history of the world. And America has been an empire since the end of World War II, and we've been murdering people in the Middle East. We've been supporting not just dictatorships, you know, vaguely. We've been supporting the worst police states on earth. I mean, torturers, murderers, the very worst. Saddam Hussein was our puppet, as one example. And this is the kind of thing that leads people to be willing. In fact, you look at Mohammed Atta and those guys, their motivation was a political, earthly motivation. Right. It was not about virgins in heaven and revenge for R-rated movies or whatever. It was about Palestine. In fact, Mohammed Atta, the lead hijacker, and Osama bin Laden, his boss, had in common the fact that they both decided that's it, something's got to be done about America after Israel massacred all those women and children at Qana, Lebanon, in 1996. They said, you know what, that's it. Israel killed, one woman and one child too many for me. I'm going to war. And they worked together to kill 3,000 Americans. Now, Gardner, let me put it to you this way. If Dick Cheney and George Bush said to the American people after September 11th, listen, we have a world empire, we're the greatest nation in the world, nobody can ever mess with us, we get to dominate every country, every economy on earth forever. But occasionally, 3,000 of you are going to have to die in spectacular terrorist attacks like this, but that's the price we got to pay. How would the American people have responded to that? Would they not have given up their world empire in 1 week? But instead they were told what? Freedom itself was attacked.
Right.
Your right to control your own life is the reason they're trying to get us. Well, what choice do you have now if you believe that? That your back is to the wall, that you've done nothing, but now you must defend yourself except to go to war. And that's where the American people still are. And the argument that you bring up, that no, they hate us for what our government does, not for who we are, still has not won the day, Garth. It still has not won the day. This is an argument that, I don't know, maybe a quarter of Americans understand or a third, but we need 70% to figure this out, or we're going to continue down this path.
And Scott, once you get that realization in your head, it's like taking a breath of fresh air. You can see things much more clearly if you look at all of these things, going back to the establishment of Israel, going back to the imposition of the Shah when the CIA put the Shah into the Middle East. all these things, even going back to the British days in India and the time of the Raj, and of course the breakup of the Middle East after World War II and splitting all these different countries up into different weird zones and so on. The influence of the so-called West on politics and the different tribes and so on that have had problems with each other down there, whether they might be Jewish tribes, Palestinian tribes, Islamic tribes, Hindu tribes, any of these things. The influence of the West down there has just been unbelievable, and these people resent it greatly. And when you look at the history of it, then you say to yourself, oh yeah, I get it now. I understand. And what you just gave us in a quick thumbnail sketch is provided often over at Antiwar.com, and you cover so much more. Now, let's take a...
Yeah, one thing about the Arab world there. They used to love the United States of America. It's Israel that has destroyed that. Well, and our support for the Saudi dictatorship and the rest of them. But the people of the Middle East in general used to love America for one overriding reason above all. We had proved that you can declare independence from the British. We were the first to throw off the British Empire and be free. It didn't matter that we looked like them. We were the example to the world.
Well, that's a great point. Yeah, that's a great point. Now with the Obama administration doing what it's doing, Scott, again, I'll reiterate, I hope that people more on the left-wing side will look at what he's doing, and they won't just sentimentally say, and I've run into this with people, I think he's trying to do the right thing, as if they can ascribe some sort of pure motivation to him and malevolent motivation to George Bush when they're coming out with the same results. Greater resentment, greater involvement of the United States in the Middle East, further breaches of the United States Constitution on issues that supposedly they found important, civil liberties, no torture, making sure that people got trials under U.S. courts. Let's look at some of the things that are happening in the Middle East. There's actually almost a sadly funny story that the UN now is going to try to stop the money that would be going to the terrorist groups that, of course, hate us because of our culture, wink, wink, to try to cut off their drug shipping routes. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, there's an article that's up on Antiwar.com today that I thought was hilarious. They've had such a problem with trying to eradicate opium there, whether to just drive up the prices for their own reasons or what, I don't really know. I mean, I tend to assume that the CIA is heavily involved as long as there's opium dealing going on, but I don't really know about that. It's on face value, they've been trying to eradicate the poppy production in Afghanistan, and of course, that's impossible because as anyone who doesn't read the National Review would understand, if you get rid of the opium, you only make the stuff that's left more valuable, and you create more incentive for more people to go in the opium business and around like that. Well, somebody finally hit somebody at the UN upside the head with some libertarian economic theory or something, and they said, you know what we need to do? Not that this is libertarian, but at least they're beginning to understand supply and demand here a little bit. We've got to give them credit for UN bureaucrats, right?
Yeah.
And they've said, let's close the border of Afghanistan. Right, like that's easy enough.
That's not going to happen, but... Yeah. And
we'll flood the domestic market with opium and drive the price down, and then everyone will want to grow wheat instead. Well, I got an easier solution if you want to drive down the price.
Right.
Legalize it.
Exactly.
End all prohibition. And there's no reason, really, in fact, especially if you legalize all drugs across the board, there's no reason to believe that Afghan opium production would or should be, for any particular reason, all geared toward illegal recreational heroin abuse consumption. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
There are all kinds of medicines that are made out of opiates all around the world that people, life-saving drugs, really, that, people benefit greatly from.
Yeah.
And there's a wonderful supply of opium painkillers for hospitals around the world right there. Just legalize it. But instead, no, they're going to try a different kind of intervention. They're going to try to somehow prevent people from smuggling the heroin out in order to drive the price down. Well, if they can close the border of Afghanistan so well, how come Osama bin Laden got away to Pakistan? And how come we're still fighting this giant war on the Pashtun-Durand line border there between these two countries? I mean, the whole premise is, well, not half the premise is a joke, basically.
Absolutely right.
Able to do that.
And Scott, looking at this, in totality, being a person who is in favor of individual liberty, I don't want to, blow this up to be more than what it is, but I think at the heart of this, you're seeing the consequences of politicians getting in the way of people making decisions in their own lives, whether it's due to the so-called drug war, inspiring a black market and creating criminal elements, giving money to criminal elements, and not putting everything out there in a way that would be in the free market, where real businesses would be competing against each other, and it would inspire honest dealing with people, sort of the way, for example, I mean, Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola have stimulants in them called caffeine. That stimulant is a legal stimulant, and they are not battling each other with guns and knives and inspiring all sorts of black market activity. There are all sorts of things that are legal, mind-changing materials that, when you're out in the regular marketplace, they actually just compete like honest dealers.